People are beginning to wake up and realize that much of the hardship that we are now facing in Western society is due to a group of extraordinarily narcissistic individuals. These people are known as the baby boomers. Watch the end of the video to fully understand the implications of people waking up and realizing that most of the pain and suffering that's happening around us today is due to the actions of the baby boomers. Today's video comes to us from the After Pill. His channel will be linked in the description so that you can go check him out and support his content. And now let's just go ahead and jump right into the video.
In this video, I'm going to explain why everyone, especially Gen Z specifically, hates the baby boomers. Who has benefited more from their stock portfolio? Who has benefited more from the 401 scam program? Who has benefited more from the real estate market? Who has benefited more from the American society, the society that we fought for or killed everybody over all of these decades and centuries? Who has benefited more? Well, clearly, we already know the answer. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to the wealthiest generation to ever live, the baby boomers, everybody. The baby boomers. And they continue and still are milking the system. They're even leading the country. Most of the people who were in Congress, the House, the Senate, who has our last, few presidents been, it's been the boomers. And every time they get into political office, every time they get into power and stay in power, they make sure that they enrich their own pockets and everybody in that generation. And in doing so, they've made sure everybody else gets the crumbs, including their own children. And Gen X, I believe, is the lost generation, right? I believe that's the hippie generation, right? That's the hippie generation. The minds start to of those children start to become more liberal. They start getting into drugs. They start to become more into liberal arts and things that don't matter, right? They also came across the drug epidemic, the crack cocaine era. So a lot of that just messed them up, right? And then after that, the millennials, the 80s through the 90s, right? They got the bad end of the stick. Gen X fumbled the baby boomers' wealth, so they had nothing to give down to millennials, right? And then after millennials, you have the good old Gen Z, right? The good old Gen Z. We're born in the internet era, social media era, right? Instant gratification era, right? And the bag has already been fumbled. So we're the generation that have to literally start over from scratch, not from the same paper, not from the same framework as the baby boomers or even Gen X, not from the same framework. We're starting at a different level, not even seen before. We have to deal with things that are not that no generation has ever had to deal with. We have to deal with AI. We have to deal with internet. We have to deal with social media. We have to deal with the bombardment of advertisements in every angle, right? We have to deal with the school system being faded out, degrees no longer mattering, right? We have to deal with all these, and it's almost like every single year something else hits, boom, something else hits, boom, something else hits, boom. And baby boomers continue to tell us, hey, just work hard and trust the process. Just work hard and trust the process. Make sure you invest in your 401k. Listen, man, the old way is no way. The old way is a no-go way. That shit is not working anymore. And Gen Z has woke up and smelt the coffee and realized that they've been lied to this whole time. They've been lied to this whole time. See, if you're investing into your 401k, your 401 scam right now, and you're just now starting out, especially as a Gen Z person working, you're not investing directly into yourself. You're investing into the system that is still fueling and feeding the older generations.
You see, one thing you have to understand about the boomers is that the boomers are part of the me generation. They are the me generation. They only cared about themselves. They sold out our futures while we were still in diapers. There are a lot of people who are very complacent when it comes to the boomers, and that they try to dismiss the action of the boomers. They blame the state. They come up with conspiracy theories. They start saying that it's another group of people that are responsible for all of this. Let me tell you something. The people who are predominantly responsible for everything that is happening around us are the people who sold out America and stole our futures from us. The way that the boomers operate is that they continue to kick the can down the road. They are responsible for all of the hyperinflation around us. All of the programs that exist right now, the vast majority of them are going to benefit the baby boomers. The reason why none of us can afford homes is because of the baby boomers. They have sucked all of the equity out of us, out of the states, out of the United States, out of the job market, out of everything, out of the housing market. They have sucked the equity out of everything, and they continue to do it. The boomers own the entirety of the real estate market. This is something that has never happened before. The boomers own 80% of the stock market. 80% of the stock market is held by the boomers. This means that they can literally collapse the stock market whenever they feel like it. As many of them are now getting older and starting to retire, we're not talking about the fact that many of them will have to begin withdrawing funds from their 401ks. When that, guys, where's all of the money in their 401ks? They're invested in a variety of different funds, even mutual funds. When the boomers start withdrawing funds, that means that they're going to begin selling shares. When they start selling shares, what do you think happens to these companies? Well, the boomers own the majority of all wealth in the United States. So they're going to pull this money out, and that money is not going to ever go back in. It's not like they're going to take that money that they're pulling out of 401k and then reinvest it. No, the boomers like to have a damn good time. So they're going to take that money and have a damn good time with it. All right? They're going to continue to buy endless amounts of crap that they don't need, go on one trip after another trip. Oh, I'm going on another cruise. I've never been on a cruise in my entire life. Many of us watching this video right now, many of you watching this video right now have never been on a cruise in your entire lives. It's extremely easy to completely just, wash away and wipe away what the boomers have done, but they have done some truly awful things. They are the reason for that so many people are suffering right now, and they vote in large numbers. The boomers, they flood voting polls. They stuff the ballots to get the things that they want. When they turned 18, they suddenly realized, holy cow, I can just run to the polls and vote for the things that benefit me, 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 me. And that's what they did as a generation. They ran to the polls and they began voting for policies that benefited only them. The boomers have never cared about anyone else but themselves. It's the truth. Previous generations sacrificed everything for the future generations. The greatest generation. We will make a better world for our children. The silent generation. We will make a better world for our children. The baby boomers. Bleep you entitled brats. And then, they jump to the millennials. Kids, not happening. And of course, they left out Gen X, and that's just the way we like it. But, I mean, that's how the boomers are. That's who the boomers have always been. While every other generation has planned ahead for the future of their children, wanting to ensure that their children had a better future than they did, the boomers are completely different. I mean, check out this comment on a video that I was just looking at. This guy wrote, "My dad is a boomer. He made a comment yesterday that sums everything up perfectly. He said, my generation partied and lived it up, and now we're making your generation pay for it without a care in the world." He's not the typical boomer. He's actually extremely resentful of a lot of his generation. I've often talked about the boomers as being the generation responsible for a lot of the political correctness that the world is suffering from right now. So much of it stems from the boomers. Guys, they've talked about it. Okay. George Carlin warned us about the boomers. He said the boomers, they took it all. They took it all for 50 years. He said it sex, drugs's, rock and roll. They took all of it, all right? They went from the white fluffy stuff to Rogaine. This is who they are, and they basically sold out our futures. They stole them while we were in diapers, and then tell us to shut the hell up about it. That's what all these corrupt groups are doing right now. You look at the gaming industry, they want you to shut up about the fact that the people who are making the games or the people who are advising the boards that make these games have outright say that they hate the gamers, the consumer. If you look at the movie industry, okay, they're acting like, oh, they're being bullied. They literally despise the people that they make the content for. And then when you say that, when people are like, you know what, we're not going to take it anymore, they basically start saying that they're the victims and they're going to keep on doing what they're doing until they go bankrupt. The boomers are exactly the same. They are going to run everything into the ground until everyone is bankrupt or they are bankrupt. And the craziest thing about the boomers is half of all boomers have no retirement savings. Back in the 1990s and prior to that, it was very, very rare for a person over the age of 50 to be homeless. It was something like 80% or more of all homeless people back in the 90s and prior, were under the age of 50. Now, the fastest growing population among the homeless are baby boomers. Where did all of this money go? It's quite simple. These people lived off the economy. They lived off good economies. Guys, jobs were created for them. Their parents ensured that there was a world for them to prosper in. They stole everything from us. Most of the properties that these people purchased for $15,000 back in 1960 or 1970. Guys, these properties, and I'll also link it in the description so that you can go and check it out for yourselves. Because the boomers, what they have done is they have stolen our futures and they want us to shut up about it. I have the boomers popping up in my comments like, not all of us are bad and we didn't do anything. I didn't use any substances. I mean, come on, you guys are pretty bad. You guys are pretty bad. You guys are very much responsible for this. Guys, I used to refer to them as a hole is a hole boomers. All right, because anything went for them. It didn't matter what it was. They basically just wanted to have a good time.
Dear Boomers, it is us, your Millennial and Gen Z children, and we are going through a very difficult economic change in 2024, and I want to share a few of our struggles with you. I want to bring you back to the 1980s, 1990s, and really show you just how difficult things got. The purpose of this is not to point fingers, this is not to blame, this is simply to share that where we are in this country is unfortunately not going in the right direction for people under 40. I think the Boomers and the Gen Xers kind of got over the line just in time before everything shifted. But the 4 points that I want to make is rent, housing, Social Security, which actually could affect you personally. I don't think it will, but I want to go over that. And then number 4, which is a very, very big one, which is retirement for millennials and Gen Zs in the future and how we're supposed to set up for that. So the first thing that I want to talk about is rent. If you have a child who's looking to rent right now, I'm sure you're aware of how these rent prices are astronomical, but I want to just kind of break down the differences of just how difficult it is and why we need a change here. So if you look back to 1980, I don't know if you remember your very first apartment, but the average apartment in 1980 was $243. So that was average across the country. And the minimum wage was $3.10 in 1980. So your gross income was $496 for the month. So it wasn't much, but it was $496. But if you wanted to rent that average apartment working a minimum wage job, it would be 49% of your gross income. So that's still a lot, but you could manage 49% of your gross income. You could get into an apartment, move out, work a minimum wage job, and then work your way up in life. Now, if we fast forward to 2024, the average rent in this country has shot up to $1,900. And the federal minimum wage is only $7.25. So that individual working 40 hours at minimum wage would make $1,160. So they can't even afford to live in the average apartment in this country working minimum wage. Even if they got together with another one of their colleagues who are working minimum wage and they put their money together, they still could not afford to split the average apartment in this country. So that's pretty concerning. But this next step is where it gets kind of alarming. So the average college graduate, their starting pay in 2024 hourly is $24 an hour. Their gross income is $3,840 a month. But here's the scary part. A college graduate making $24 an hour and getting a $1,900 apartment is 49% of their gross income. So in 1980, a minimum wage worker could walk into a job, train for 1 week, invest no money, and could go and rent an apartment on their own and spend 49% of their gross income. Today in 2024, a college graduate is investing 4 to 6 years of their life, $50,000 to $100,000 to get a starting job at $24 an hour, which is the same percentage of their income as a minimum wage worker in 1980. Now, number two, since we're speaking about housing, I want to talk about the housing prices. When it comes to the housing market, I just want to break down again, we'll use 1980. The median household income was $22,000 and the median house price was $47,000. Now, you all had those daunting 13% interest rates, which is wild. We only have 7.5% now. But because the housing price was so small, you're going to see how this plays out of why that was actually a little easier in 1980 compared to today. So the first point I want to make is that if you made $22,000 as a family and you wanted to buy a $47,000 average home and you wanted to save up a 20% down payment, that would be about $11,000 with closing costs to get your foot in the door. But your family was making $22,000 and you needed to save just $11,000. So that's about half your yearly salary and a down payment closing cost, which was challenging. This might have taken families 6 months or even 3 years. But once they achieved that, they were able, even with 13% interest rates, with the average income, to qualify for the loan with the average house. And your monthly payment out the door with 13% interest rates, with your principal and interest, property taxes, and homeowners insurance, was about $485 a month. My parents got their house in 1977. I think their payment was about $300 a month. Their interest rate was 9%. I'm curious if you want to comment below what your interest rate or what your house price was. But on average, it was about $485 a month out the door, which was only 26% of your gross income. Now, if you fast forward to 2024, here's what the Millennials and Gen Zs are facing in today's market. The median household income did shoot up to $85,000, which is pretty nice, but the median house price is now $415,000. So the income to the house is 5 times more. The house is 5 times more than the actual median income, which is very daunting and really not doable. But the next part is if your Millennial or Gen Z child wants to save a 20% down payment, they would have, and closing costs, they would have to save up $100,000. So that is more than their actual yearly salary on average, where if you look back to 1980, your $11,000 was just half your yearly salary, where now it is more than our yearly salary for a 20% down payment. Now, we could put down just 3%, 5%, or 10%, but unfortunately, because the house price is so much, we can't qualify. The only way a Millennial or Gen Z could qualify for a $400,000 to a $450,000 average home in this country is they would have to put down about 20%, and they would have to have their college debt, their credit cards, and their vehicles paid off to even have a shot at qualifying for this house today. That is a huge feat for a couple making $85,000 to even $100,000 to pay off their student loans, to pay off their vehicles, to have no credit cards, and save $100,000. And even if they pull that off, it will still be about 40% of their gross income. which is on the verge of making them house poor. This is where they're paying for their house. They have it, thank God, but with their cars or potentially kids and daycare and their house, they really won't have much money to thrive or save for retirement. So these are the challenges that we're facing today. Again, I'm only bringing this up to give perspective on how things have gotten so messed up, and what we need to fix this housing market is more supply. So we have to think about this as we move towards the elections, as we move toward, and not even just this year, but in the next 4, 8, 12 years, we have to start putting pressure on the politicians to talk about the economy and fix the housing. Because if we're spending 40% on rent, or 40% on buying a house, it's leaving less money for us to do other things with. And that's really the biggest problem. Groceries are high, gas is high, everything's high. But if we can get housing under control, we'll have that extra 10 or 20% to put towards everything else. Now, the next thing, this might actually concern you a little bit here, is Social Security. And this kind of blew my mind when I first learned about this. So Social Security, we were under the assumption that when FICA was taken out of our paychecks, our Social Security and Medicare, that it was going into a fund that would accrue interest and it would be there for us when we retire as a supplemental retirement. Well, they actually ran out of money. You can look this up on the Social Security Administration.gov website. They have a report where you can look this up, that in 2033, the rest of that money will be depleted. So even right now today, most of the Social Security and Medicare that's being paid out to the beneficiaries are coming from the current workers today in the field. We are paying it forward to all of you so that you can retire. But in 2033, the rest of what you have left will be gone. So we're only going to be able to fund about 80% of the retirement for people over 65 or 60, whatever it is, for Social Security and Medicare. So someone, whether it's this next president, the next Congress, next president, whoever's going to come in, or within the next 9 years, they're either going to have to raise the taxes, print money, or borrow money to make sure that you continue to get your 100%, because the current workers are only funding about 80% of it. So I don't think they're going to cut your benefits, but they are going to have to either borrow money, print money, or raise taxes, which is going to affect the millennials and Gen Zers. And we just kind of have to hope that this doesn't keep going in this direction where there's just no money for us when millennials and Gen Zs retire. So that is a concern. And the thing that we're a little frustrated about is that if it's not going to be there for us, if this will finally kind of fall apart, even though they've been talking about it for years, if it falls apart on us, we had to pay 7.65% every single paycheck in the toughest economy, and it might not be there for us. So that is a little bit frustrating, but I do have hopes we're going to figure this out. But again, it makes me just think of retirement.
So if you understand economics and how things actually work, unfortunately, I don't know. This is why I say I'm a Zennial, but at the end of the day, I grew up during the Gen X era. I was born during the Gen X era. And a lot of Gen Xers, they don't speak up about this because they damn well know that the money does not actually exist. We have so much debt right now that it's just literally IOUs everywhere. What the boomers did is that they used this crazy type of accounting where they're able to move debt further down the road. So there's all this money that needs to be paid, all of this debt that needs to be paid. And what the boomers did was they used this accounting principle that allows them to say that it'll be paid by a future generation. So by, let's say, the year 2030 or 2035, there's $50 billion or $200 billion that needs to be paid, but they're saying like, well, by then enough wealth should have been generated by future generations that wealth can be paid, that debt will be paid by them. And they've been doing this for decades. So there's literally trillions of dollars right now that needs to be paid in IOUs, and some of it's going to become due over the next decade. And the boomers are basically saying that Gen Z is going to have to pay for it. The reason why they're saying Gen Z will have to pay for it is because the calculations were basically based around millennials. So they're like, the millennials are tapped. There's no more money that they can, take out of the millennials. There's no more money that they can get out of Gen X, even though they always forget about Gen X. And that's just the way Gen X likes it. But yeah, they're tapped out. So now they're looking at Gen Z and they're like, okay, well, Gen Z is going to have to start paying for this stuff. We're going to have to raise taxes on Gen Z. The millennials are already cooked. Gen X is basically just doing Gen X, and we're going to get as much as we can out of Gen Z. And Gen Z is just going to have to, suck it up and stop complaining. This is what's happening with the boomers right now. That's their grand plan, is to rob Gen Z. It's a very, very sick way of doing things, but that's the way that these people think. It's sad. It's very, very sad.
To put a button onto this, to wrap this up in a bow, this is my biggest concern. So buying a house and owning a house has always been a staple of the middle class. We grew up thinking the white picket fence and the tire swing. If you really knocked it out of the park with the American dream, you got that picket fence and a tire swing, got a house. And that's where a lot of the net worth for the boomers are. It's in your stocks and it's in your home. So whether you bought your home for 80 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever it is today, that is a net worth to you. But more than the appreciation in the net worth, you no longer have a housing payment. If your house is paid off right now, you pay just property taxes and homeowners insurance. If you live in a $400,000 home right now, your housing burden for your retirement the rest of your life is just property tax and homeowner insurance for $600. Wouldn't you agree if you had to buy that house today with these interest rates and it would be $3,500 a month to live in your same house, that would be so much more difficult for retirement if you needed $3,000 more to live in that house? Or maybe you go, I would never buy, I would just rent. To rent your $400,000 home would probably be $2,500. Wouldn't you agree you're much happier paying only $600 instead of $2,500 to rent it? And the other option would be, well, I wouldn't rent the house, I wouldn't buy the house, I would just go live in an apartment. First of all, that's not that great if you're gonna work 45 years of your life to then go retire in an apartment. You want your 4-bedroom house to have holidays, to have a garden, to go outside, maybe you have a pool, you can have your grandkids come over. It's a wonderful place to retire if you own a house and you've got that equity. But you don't want to go into an apartment and spend $2,000 a month, even $1,800 a month if you got lucky. Again, wouldn't you agree spending $600 for this beautiful home is better than $1,800 in an apartment for your retirement, having to spend that extra money?
The best thing that could potentially happen to us is someone comes along and solves this housing problem where increasingly millennials, Gen Xers, and Gen Zers just walk away completely from the housing market, abandon the very notion of picking up these trash properties, and begin using modular homes. I'm hopeful that modular housing is going to become a big trend. So like these things that are called tiny homes, really what a lot of them are modular homes. And you can stack them in a variety of different ways and turn them into very functional homes. Because there's plenty of land out there. So if you're able to get a piece of land, relatively cheap, and it's still very possible. Because the boomers are corrupt. They want you to go and purchase these crazy properties that cost $1 million, $3 million. And when you say to them, where the heck am I supposed to get that kind of money? They have this their eyes are like sunken in. Guys, I can't deal with these. Just like Gen Z, they rub me the wrong way. I don't like Gen Zers. I don't want to mentor Gen Zers. I've more or less given up on Gen Zers. I get it. Not all Gen Zers are bad people, but realistically, I don't like most of them, and I don't want to have anything to do with most of them. They are dishonest, and they're shisty and shady people. You can't really trust anything that they say, and they're just going to try to take advantage of you, just like the baby boomers. Realistically, they just want to have a good time. Just like the baby boomers. They don't care about anyone else but themselves. All right? They're so fast to call every other generation a boomer when they don't get what they want. They're really evil. Very, very evil. The boomers, I don't know, guys. I'm beyond sick of it. I'm beyond sick of it. These people who were so irresponsible and lived irresponsible lives are jokers. And if, like, for example, this guy is making this video, breaking it down using reason, it won't touch the boomers at all. They won't comprehend any of it because they don't give a damn. They are just, guys, the way that they view things is like this. I'm going to pass away in the next 10 to 20 years, all right? 30 years max. I don't care what happens to you. I don't care about anyone else but myself. I have to get whatever I want, and I need to live a good life, and that's it. All right? To heck with the rest of you. You can pass away when I go too. All right? The only thing that matters is me, 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 me. And of course, I'm not going to be honest and admit to this because I am who I am. And I'm going to keep on running this scam. And I also want to remind you guys, if you want to support this channel and everything that I do, check out the Angry Guy Clubhouse. Get top expat and passport bro travel tips, digital nomad guides, passive income strategies, and hard-hitting manosphere content. Free subscribers get access to videos, podcasts, articles, and community chat, plus receive the passive income blueprint and digital nomad blueprint just for subscribing. Paid subscribers unlock exclusive guides like the How to Build an Online Business in 24 Hours ebook, wealth building blueprints, and crypto updates. Join us now. Click the link in the description. The boomers stole our futures while we were in diapers, and the very notion of stealing it back from them is just a downright joke. The only thing that we have looking forward to are massive amounts of debt. While many boomers are ending up homeless right now, the truth of the matter is that they're never going to stop because they don't know anything else. The best thing you can do for yourself is to basically focus on yourself, gain tangible assets and develop skills, and plan your exit strategy because it's not going to get any better from here. The truth of the matter is that boomers are going to continue on down the road that they're going, and there's not much that we can do about it other than walking away and telling them, deal with it yourself, take care of these problems yourself. And if they need anything, you charge them out, you charge them as much as you possibly can. Charge them well for your services, charge them for everything. Okay? Otherwise, cut back on the amount that you actually work. All right, do not fight for a system that does not like you, a system that HATESs you, a system that is only taking advantage of you. Do you guys agree that it's time to blame the boomers? Let me know your thoughts and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA. Been walking away, and cheers.